Commander's Log, U-Boat 552, 10th of March 1941. We have returned to Wilhelmshaven port after a successful foray into the Barents Sea, where we delivered a weather station to Bear Island. While there, we were successfully blooded, downing 3 British destroyers. The crew and I are in high spirits after such a successful attack. Unfortunately, we have no time for respite. We have been issued orders to immediately depart as soon as possible for the Black Pit, an area southwest of Ireland. Headquarters have reviewed the after-action report and given me permission to promote Lucky Stan to the watch team. He will now become first watch officer on board the ship. While being interviewed by the officer selection team, it became apparent that he was actually an avid cook, so hopefully we'll be able to replace some of Morris's recipes. Krieg's Marine HQ have finally given me the clearances to access the Intel and Technology Board, allowing me to send off-duty officers on Intel missions, which will give us access to technologies, resources, and provide us with intel on coastal defences and enemy airfield locations. The missions that you can send your officers on are limited by their character class: engineer, leader, and radio man. In this case, I will send the old First Watch Officer in partnership with the Luftwaffe on an aerial recon mission. This will provide us details of the coastal defences in the southern portion of England. And we spent the next 4 days repairing, refitting, and refueling the ship. I decided to delay departure until the morning of the 14th, so as to try and time our channel crossing at night time. Although presenting much more danger than going north of England, it does provide direct access to our mission area. As long as we always have a full crew on watch while on the surface during the day, keeping a vigilant watch for any aircraft. Aircraft will radio to other assets in the area, and so a search can begin. It's in our best interest to not let the English know that we are here. And so as we say goodbye to Wilhelmshaven, and onward to the mission at hand. Weather is reported to be clear with scattered clouds and a fairly low sea state, which is a nice change of pace from our previous mission, which was plagued by storms and an extremely heavy fog that persisted for days. I'm sure the crew will be grateful for the fresh air. Crossing the headland and hitting the open water by 9 AM, we turned westward at a steady 17 kilometers an hour. Shortly before I retired at 9 PM on the 14th, HQ radioed to say that Officer Klug had finished his mission with the Luftwaffe. With my watch ended, I retired for the evening, handing the helm to Lucky for his first time as XO. Night watch confirming that all was clear, no contacts, as we started to make our way into the channel proper. The 15th of March brought us a slight haze and very flat seas. Unfortunately, my timing was poor and we entered the strait at approximately 3 AM the 16th of March. At 2 PM, the watch spotted what they thought to be smoke on the horizon. I increased speed in an attempt to shadow the target. Unfortunately, this turned out to be the wrong choice. A short time later, aircraft was spotted off to our 7 o'clock. I immediately ordered a dive. Crew were able to identify a bow fighter diving on our position just as they closed the hatch. After being spotted, no doubt they would have radioed Coastal Command, so this left us in a tricky position. We spent the remainder of the channel crossing submerged, only rising at night to take on oxygen. This left the crew in quite the dour mood, and drastically delayed our approach to the search area. Arriving at the coordinates on the 21st of March, just after midnight. Clear weather and a low sea state allowed us to commence a surface search. At 2 PM, we spotted a lone freighter. I identified the ship type and ran a torpedo solution. Watch crew informing me that the ship was flying a Portuguese flag. As they made no move to evade, we let them be. Stan suggested we play a game of which potato is which. Putting the potatoes in 3 different sacks, we convinced the crew that the meal was full of different potatoes, which it technically was. Stan assured me that this would raise morale, and it did look delicious. But looks can be deceiving. It turns out that our chief engineer has a chronic allergy to starch, and so he suffered from terrible cramps. As some recompense, we put cheese and bacon back on the menu. Moral of the story? Don't ever play hide the potato on a ship. At 8 PM, 2 freighters were spotted, and attempts to radio them were fruitless. I ordered all men to battle stations and engines to flank speed, immediately pursuing our targets. On the surface, the U-boat can run at over 30 kilometers an hour, so these freighters don't really have a chance of escape. Curiously, for neutral ships, they started to use torpedo evasion techniques. Highly suspicious. In the course of identification, we noticed that the lead ship was actually Norwegian. While Norway tried to be neutral, they aren't. So as per our orders, they are fair game. The trailing ship, however, is Swedish, so we cannot torpedo them without good cause. Managing to catch up to the ship, they did surrender and halt their engines. Time to assemble the crew. The freighter is unarmed and seems not to be escorted. While it sails under the neutral flag, we should investigate what it's carrying and its destination to ensure that they're not smugglers head to an enemy port. This time we'll send a delegation to search the ship because they ran. We will also arm the crew, as we can't be sure of the intentions of this freighter. Let's go, Stan. Meanwhile, the Norwegian ship makes a hasty exit. The captain of the freighter helps the crew get on deck and greets each of them with a "Willkommen." He introduces himself as Jim Schneider. He knows only the basics of German, but luckily Mikoyan from our group speaks fluent English. There is no language barrier as a result. He invites us downstairs. The captain is asked for his shipping documents, which he provides willingly, although Lucky noted that he was nervous. After carefully inspecting the documents, it is apparent that the ship is headed to the port of Vigo with medical supplies. If these documents are correct, then the ship is not a war target and sinking it would be a crime. However, we are a little bit skeptical due to the actions that the ship took. And to my knowledge, this type of good isn't really used in the port of Vigo. As such, we questioned this motive. The captain explained that it's actually completely common for this type of freighter to head to Port of Vigo, and he continues to tell us about companies that he works with in the area. Lucky asks him if we could search the cargo hold, to which the captain obliges. 20 minutes later, all clear is given by the crew, and we decide to depart the ship, waving them on their way. We are honourable fighters, and we will never harm a person not directly involved in this conflict. However, our friend the Norwegian ship does not get this kind of treatment. As they are alone and undefended, we will give them a chance to surrender. Despite having approximately 1 hour's head start, we quickly catch up to the ship. Despite trying to radio them, they ignore us, so I man the 88 gun and order a warning shot fired. They still continue to ignore us, so unfortunately, they must be sunk. Using AP rounds to penetrate the rear of the ship, my goal is to cause flooding in the engine room, hopefully minimizing the damage to the crew and allowing them to abandon the ship. This proves to be successful, and a short while later, the ship sinks quickly. Though it might seem spiteful, I decide not to assist the survivors of this shipwreck and leave them for their Swedish friends to pick them up, knowing they're only 30 minutes or so behind. Curiously, the ship had no cargo. The next day we run into another Portuguese ship. This time I decide to search it. Although I'm not too concerned about danger because the Portuguese are generally friendly. In this case, we were greeted with nothing but scorn. We asked him for his documents, which he had already provided on the deck. No hospitality offered whatsoever. The captain of the freighter seemed more annoyed than aggressive, so I decided to take him at his word, as his documents were in order, and we departed the ship as soon as possible. Although I was a little tempted to mess with him and tell him I was going to sink the ship and then leave. But karma is a funny way of working its way back to us. That evening I was summoned on deck as Tam Tank thought he saw something in the distance. His intuition proved to be correct, spotting a destroyer off our port bow approximately 2 kilometers away. Fortunately, they had not yet seen us. After consulting the identification manual, I realized it was another tribal class destroyer, similar to the one sunk off the Barents Sea a few weeks ago. You have 4 tools you can use when trying to work out a torpedo solution: your identification book, your chronometer to work out the speed of the vessel, you have to measure the distance that the ship travels in a certain amount of time. Stop once it reaches the stern of the ship and you have the speed of 28 kilometers an hour. The angle on bow represents where your ship is in relation to the target. In this case, I estimate us to be about 75 degrees, but I use the map tools and protractor to figure this out correctly. You do this by working out the heading of the ship and then drawing an angle from the ship's bow to your bow. The angle provided between your ship and the enemy ship's bow is the angle of bow. In this case, I was slightly off at 83 degrees. Finally, you need to measure the distance, and this is done using the ghost tool. Or I could manually enter in the distance from the map tool I just used, which was 2.5 kilometers. As the shots will be coming from behind and the ship is moving at a fast rate of speed, I use magnetic fused torpedoes set to 81 kilometers an hour at a depth of 4 meters. The aim here is to send my torpedoes under the ship so that they're exposed to metal for as long as possible. With a dispersion of 14 meters, both torpedoes should arrive at the same point on the enemy ship a short time after each other. I do this with the aim to cause catastrophic damage. Just to be careful, we dive anyway. And as predicted, she's taken massive damage underneath her sea turret. And before the crew had even a chance to abandon, the ship went down in less than a minute. Being a warship, I couldn't take the chance of her sinking slowly or turning to fight me. Short while later, we received a transmission from HQ stating that a crucial technology had been loaded onto a freighter ship and must be sunk at all costs. We were given the coordinates and headed to the location. The only thing is, he's part of a gigantic convoy, and we are the only U-boat in the area. We need to take the time to plan, and we cannot rush into this. Until next time, Commander Tyrael, out. If you've enjoyed this, make sure to hit the like and subscribe. I love it.